No one could explain why the dog waited there every morning, sitting at the same cracked bus stop bench, staring down the empty road, as if expecting someone who had already been forgotten by the world. And the most unsettling part was that the dog never barked, never begged, never moved. He only waited, quietly, faithfully, as if patience itself had become his last form of hope. The town was small, the kind where everyone noticed everything except the things that truly mattered. People passed the dog daily on their way to work, school, or the factory at the edge of town. Some avoided his eyes. Some tossed scraps without slowing down. Others joked about him, calling him the statue because he sat so still that it felt wrong to disturb him. But none of them knew why he waited, and none of them asked, because in real life, people often walk past silent pain more easily than noisy suffering. The dog had once belonged to a man named Thomas Hale. Thomas was not special in any way that made headlines. He was not rich, famous, or powerful. He worked as a maintenance worker at the local railway depot, fixing things no one noticed unless they broke. He lived alone in a modest rented house after his wife passed away years earlier, and his days followed a simple rhythm: wake up before sunrise, weak tea, go to work, come home tired, sleep, repeat. The only thing that broke the monotony of his life was the dog. Thomas found the dog on a freezing winter evening, shivering near the tracks with one injured leg. The dog was thin, his ribs visible, his fur matted with dirt and oil. Thomas did not plan to keep him. He barely earned enough to survive himself. But the dog looked at him with a quiet desperation that felt uncomfortably familiar. It was the same look Thomas saw in the mirror some nights, the look of someone still hoping, despite having every reason not to. He carried the dog home, wrapped him in an old blanket, and spent his savings on a vet visit the next morning. The leg healed slowly. The dog learned to walk again. Thomas named him Lucky, not because life had been kind, but because survival itself felt like luck to him. From that day forward, Thomas and Lucky became inseparable. Lucky waited by the door every morning as Thomas left for work. Lucky greeted him every evening as if no time had passed at all. The dog followed him everywhere in quiet walks, to the small grocery store, even to the bus stop where Thomas caught his ride to the depot. Eventually, Lucky learned to sit there patiently while Thomas boarded the bus, watching until it disappeared down the road. That bus stop became their ritual. What no one knew was that Thomas talked to Lucky the way people talk to someone who truly listens. He told him about his loneliness, his regrets, the child he never had. The nights when the silence in the house felt heavier than grief, Lucky never interrupted. He only leaned closer, his presence steady and warm, a living reminder that someone still needed Thomas in this world. Then one morning, Thomas did not come home. At work, there was an accident, nothing dramatic enough for the news, just a mechanical failure and a moment of bad timing. Thomas was rushed to the hospital unconscious. He survived, but not in the way people imagine survival. A head injury left him unable to speak properly, confused and weak. When he woke up, days later, the first word he tried to say was Lucky's name, but it came out broken, unintelligible, and unnoticed by the busy hospital staff. Lucky waited at the bus stop that evening. He waited the next morning too, and the morning after that. Days passed, then weeks. People noticed the dog, then not because they cared, but because his waiting had become unsettling. The dog refused to leave. Rain soaked his fur. Cold winds rattled the empty bench beside him. Still, he waited. Some tried to take him away. Lucky resisted, growling softly, not in anger, but in fear, as if leaving that spot meant abandoning the one thing he believed in. Eventually, a local woman began leaving water nearby. Another placed a worn blanket under the bench. A few shared photos online, calling him the loyal bus stop dog. But attention does not always lead to understanding. The story spread, but the truth remained buried in silence. In the hospital, Thomas lay confused and afraid. Without Lucky, his recovery slowed. He stopped responding. He stopped eating. Doctors said his will seemed absent. No one knew about the dog. No one connected the invisible thread between a man lying in a hospital bed and a dog waiting at a forgotten bus stop. One day, a volunteer named Rachel was assigned to Thomas's ward. She noticed something others had missed. Every time a dog barked outside the hospital, Thomas stirred. Eyes searched the room. His breathing changed. Rachel asked questions. Slowly, through fragmented words and old documents, she learned about Lucky. What she found next broke her. She saw the photos online. She recognized the bus stop. The next morning, Rachel drove there. Lucky was still waiting. He's older now, thinner, his eyes dulled by exhaustion, but still fixed on the road. When Rachel spoke Thomas's name, Lucky's ears lifted for the first time in days. When she showed him a photo of Thomas on her phone, something inside the dog shifted. He stood up, trembling not with weakness, but with recognition. Rachel took Lucky to the hospital, and Lucky entered the room. Thomas cried for the first time since the accident. Not loudly, not dramatically. Tears simply fell, silently, as Lucky placed his head on Thomas's chest, exactly where he always had. Machines beeped faster. Nurses stopped. Something invisible but powerful filled the room, the kind of moment no medical chart can explain. From that day, Thomas improved. Slowly, painfully, but surely, he relearned words. He relearned movement. And Lucky never left his side. Months later, Thomas returned home, changed but alive, holding Lucky's leash in his shaking hand. They no longer went to the bus stop. That chapter was over, but the lesson remained, etched quietly into the town's memory. People had walked past loyalty, walked past patience, walked past love because it didn't shout. The truth is, animals often understand something humans forget, that presence matters more than promises, that waiting can be an act of faith, and that love doesn't need to be seen to be real. And sometimes, the most powerful moral isn't spoken at all. It sits quietly on a cracked bench, waiting, hoping, believing. Long after the world has moved on,